Hello, everyone. We welcome you to the second season and the sixth episode of Sports Psyche Talk. Today, we have a very distinguished and renowned guest with us, Mugdha Bavare. And, you know, she do not need an introduction, though I know her past almost now 10 years. And she have more than 25 years of experience in the field of sports psychology, dealing with the athletes and different sporting organizations around. She herself been a international swimmer and got uh, got Shri Chhatrapati Award for excellence in swimming in 1994. Way back, actually, you know, if we look at this achievement. And she worked with more than, I think, 30 sport so far. And currently, she is the founder at Mind Sports that provides the, uh, you know, services to the sportsmen primarily and sporting organizations. She also the co-founder of Disha Counseling Center, which provides the mental health related services in Mumbai, and it is there since 1999. And she's also the lead senior sports psychologist at OGQ Olympic Gold Quest. She's dealing with the best of the best athletes over there who have the scholarship with OGQ. She recently traveled to Paris as a part of the contingent with the multiple sports, by the way, to Paris Olympic 2024, which is, I think, indeed a great achievement for any sports psychologist coming from India. And she also worked with the BCCI, which is the Board of Control for Cricket in India, especially with the women team, provides the sports psychology services to the cricketers, especially women cricketers. And she also been to the uh, Indian, with the Indian women cricket team to under 19 World Cup. If I'm not wrong, I think it was in New Zealand, I guess.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's Senior Women
yeah,
World Cup.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So one day cricket World Cup as well in 2022 in New Zealand. Various other sporting events. She working with the MCA, Mumbai Cricket Association, Indian Sailing, Army Sailing Team as well, and various other organizations at the moment. So we welcome Mugdha, you to our podcast on sports psychology. Especially, it is just not sports psychology, but we are usually talking about the psychology of sports behind and the related things. Uh, I just want to ask you, to start with the about your experience in the field of psychology and sports. How you look at your journey since past 25 years?
Thanks, Karan, for having me on this podcast. And I think it's very well conducted, and you call a lot many psychologists, sports psychologists. So I think the information is really spreading, the awareness is spreading about this topic, which is really, I think, the need of the hour. So thank you so much. Talking about my journey, there are two aspects, I think, to the journey. The first one, of course, as you have mentioned, I have been, I had been a swimmer myself, and it was like a long duration and at a competitive level, of course. And that's where academics was also a bit of a struggle. But yeah, I was managing my academics at that time, but never knew that I would land in this kind of a field at that time, because that was way back in my span of swimming was 1984 to 2000 is the time when I quit. Post that, I was, of course, as I said, I was managing my academics as well. And I took up psychology, which was a kind of a lenient stream, which I chose like humanities as a stream. Quite lenient because of the competitive nature of the sport. I had to travel a lot, take part in the competitions. So that was a little too much. So I couldn't get into science. Commerce is something which I didn't like. And then I ended up getting into doing my graduation in psychology. And that's where I picked up the interest in the field of psychology. And after that, of course, the only way after doing your graduation was getting the master's degree in psychology, and that is what I pursued in counseling psychology. So this is where I think I transitioned from being a competitive swimmer to coming into a profession of sports psychology. And now, I mean, it's I'm really enjoying this field to a great extent. So initially, I started my practice as a counseling psychologist, and the base was so helpful when I got into the field of sports psychology, because at the master's level, I think that's the that's the process that they follow, because it is applied sports psychology. Of course, we've learned theories of psychology as well, and the base is theoretical as well as the applied part of it. And that is something which, when I came into sports psychology also, that is something which is helping me to a great extent.
Yes, I think it is quite understood as well. When you have a kind of vast critical background of any subject matter, and it really too helps you to become a kind of expert in the field with the kind of competencies which you need. Uh, Mugdha, actually, we have seen you. I personally have seen you, your journey. I have, though I'm very young, actually, working as a professional in front of you. You spend a lot of time in the field. So, my next question is about what you look, kind of the traits of a sports psychologist, because it is really very important to understand, we as a sports psychologist kind of uh, personal trait, we must have, or that match our competency, and we deliver the kind of services we, usually asked for. So how you basically address, or what you want to say about the traits of a good sports psychologist, even a bad also, you can draw this comparison here.
Yeah, so few of the traits, being a psychologist or getting into a sports psychology field, few of the traits which are very, very necessary, and that is also which I have learned through my journey. It's not that I was born with those skills, but I think sport taught me a lot, and getting into the field and learning a lot about counseling psychology, because we do have a paper on counseling skills. And that was something, I think it was an eye opener for us when we were doing our masters, because these are the skills that take you forward, being into working into a professional area, something like sports psychology. So few of the things which I would name as, the first one is patience. I think that's the key, I would say. So patience is one. The other thing is, of course, uh, understanding the athlete or the player who's sitting in front of you. That's the second one. So grasping, diagnostics was one of the subjects that we have learned in masters. So that also has helped, rather than getting into finally, getting into the problem per se. How do you understand the player or the athlete who is sitting in front of you? How do you actually break it down? And for that, you definitely need patience. So these are few of the key roles of a sports psychologist. But beyond that, persistence, that is another thing, because see, it's not that, in the first meeting the player would get connected to you. Yeah, but
Yeah,
how persistently you keep um, making the player understand the importance of sports psychology. And again, I would go back to my early days when I started working as a sports psychologist, because that was the time where the awareness of sports psychology was not there. And that's the time where, more than getting the results, more than explaining to them, how mind functions, or, what are the benefits, how do you get to the result, more than that, my early journey was maybe, creating the awareness, just explaining to them the connections between their mind and body. And in those days, not necessary that I could connect to everyone, but persistence, patience, these are the two key aspects that I think just took me ahead in the field. One of the things which I also wanted to add, a very, very important trait as a psychologist or a sports psychologist, is also communication. Yeah, and
yeah,
what we always look at communication is not only the verbal communication or the way we speak to people or our players or our coaches, but it is also non-verbal. And that's, again, as I said, one of the key aspects that we've learned in the field of psychology as a counseling skills part. So communication again becomes extremely important. How do you paraphrase your statements? How do you, in a subtle way, question the athlete who is sitting in front of you without he or she getting offended? So all of these come under communication skills, and that's, I think, over a period of time, of course, we get to learn. But it is an important, a very crucial part of a sports psychology skill.
Yes, definitely. Having patience and trying to understand the athlete, that is always our first objective of a sports psychologist. So my next question, Mugdha, actually, you've been a practitioner for so long, actually, in the field of both, counseling psychology and a sports psychology, and you have this applied psychology experience also, because counseling is a lot of applied work is there in counseling
Yeah.
psychology. uh, so you see kind of any framework of assessment in sports psychology from the core psychology. There are many
Mhm.
frameworks. People, even there are, I've seen the practitioner who basically discover their own approach or own framework when they work around the athletes. So do you have kind of framework where uh, you use some kind of structured interviews or semi-structured interviews to talk to your athletes? Uh, I understand sometime, the open-ended kind of conversations with the athletes is also important. But I think to start with as a practitioner in the field of sports psychology, those who are young, basically, they may need some kind of framework to work around, basically, while we are assessing the athlete using our interview, kind of scales, or then there are some kind of
Mhm.
observation part of it, and then obviously the
Yeah.
testing part. But I just wanted to understand the framework from you. What framework do you use?
Sure, sure. So there are two, maybe I think two different approaches that I use, especially when I am based over here in my clinic, when I have athletes visiting me. Of course, I go with a very standard procedure or an approach that I follow usually. So one of the things is, of course, taking, all the details, what we call it as intake sheet, what we call it as demographic details, all of that is actually followed really very strictly. If the player athlete is below 18, then I do have even the coaches and the parents talking to me and discussing exactly what are the reasons for seeking help of sports psychology services. That's one. Secondly, of course, I go ahead with the assessment, right? So assessments are on various angles, because once I get the details from the player, I do understand and I do know what are the kind of psychometric assessments that I need to use with this particular player. So I don't usually administer everything and all the tests which are under psychometric assessments, but I pick and choose which is the one which is really most appropriate to that player. And then the intervention techniques, initially I start with the educational phase, because that's very important. 80% of the times it's the player who is experiencing these mental training sessions for the first time. Yeah, so the educational phase is a must, and in the educational phase I usually focus more on understanding yourself more. That is what we call it as self awareness, because that's again what I feel is a gap, a major gap between our athletes and how they really know themselves, because most of the times that awareness is lacking. Whether it is on the physical front, yes, now they are becoming more aware of it because we have SNCs and physios working with them. But especially when it comes to the mental aspects, we are still not, either we are not really aware of it, or we are not open about accepting the facts, whether they are positive or negative. Yeah, so the educational phase most of the times is focused on the awareness part, and then I move on with the actual intervention part. Yeah, so on the basis of what I get through the awareness phase, through the educational phase, then I move ahead with the intervention part of it. And that actually is where they have to start applying those interventions on the field, on the ground, depending on what sport it is. So this is generally the pattern that I use when I have athletes visiting me at my clinic. But the second part, also the second approach, is where, especially when I deal with the elite athletes, right? Because elite athletes at times is just where I just have to be on the field with them.
Yeah,
There is really
I,
no time when when I can do the entire process the way I have to. That doesn't mean that I uh, get into the shortcuts or I don't follow the process. But at times the assessment is maybe ad hoc assessment, which I do because I'm present on the field with them, and that's where ad hoc assessment comes into play. At times I do give paper pencil tests to them, or there are certain other activities which I do, especially if it is a group session, and through I do the assessment of the players. Yeah. So two approaches are a little different, in the sense the way I bring it out with the players. Yeah. But it's almost the same. It comes to educational phase where I have to make them aware of what mental training is all about, what are the benefits, how would it impact. It is the same, it remains the same in both the approaches.
Yeah, I think, pretty close to, those who basically have spent a lot of time in the field of sports psychology. They understand
Yeah.
how it basically goes around when you work with the different age groups
Correct.
and, working with the
Mm-hmm.
young athletes of age 9 or 10. I usually, ask their parents basically to be part of the intervention also,
Yeah.
because
Very
their
crucial.
understanding levels are not really good, and then you have to counsel more the parents than the children over there. Then obviously elite is totally a different type of requirement, because they know a lot about their sport. Actually, they have gone through a lot, and it is not, you carrying some framework for them, but they may just want to talk to you, and you just
Exactly.
need to be just patient listener over there, that may help them. And obviously some kind of mindfulness things, and sometime you may not
Yeah.
use a paper pencil test also, maybe just giving a little bit
Exactly.
pat on their shoulder and tell them you're doing good, you need to just be in the present now. So I think, yes,
Exactly.
so the work is somewhat like this only. um,
Mm-hmm.
and you as a when you grow in the field, I think you become a little bit more flexible in terms of picking and choosing kind of between the interventions, rather than following the jargons over there. So it is pretty
Correct. Yeah.
interesting actually to learn
Mm-hmm.
about from you that you are doing something. It will definitely help the budding psychologist also when they listen to this podcast. Uh, you know, because I have seen them. They are under a lot of constraints from the various organizations. They put a lot of pressure on them. Give us the report, do this testing. Recently, even I have received some kind of the protocols. I don't want to take the name of the organization. So they said, okay, I want you to do these tests. I'd be like, I just first, rather than telling me you do this, let me give you an opportunity to come and understand what kind of things you are doing. If I
Exactly.
may help you in a better way. But anyways, you have to comply to some request, do the test and give them the
Yeah.
report, and then they will deal with it in their own way.
See what happens,
Uh,
especially in yeah, can I add?
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So what generally I do, especially when it comes to elite athletes, as against the athletes, the second approach that I use is with elite athletes. See, the major emphasis that I give more onto is building those relationships, building trust, and also creating those connects. Yeah. And at
Yeah.
times that doesn't really happen by giving them a psychometric test or by giving them a paper pencil test. Is just maybe a kind of a small talk. Maybe at times I don't even relate it to sports, but a general talk. But that again, see, over a period of so many years, gained that experience. Now I exactly know how to connect to those athletes, and that's where maybe the budding psychologist can really keep in mind that just going there and directly talking about sports and talking about their issues and talking about their problems wouldn't really serve the purpose, because then you will have a big cross mark on you as a sports psychologist, because then they wouldn't really connect well to you, and it would only be a relationship which I call it as just on a surface. Yeah. But if you have to go deep down and really help the athlete and the player, that connect is extremely important.
Absolutely second you, and I 100% agree with you. I've myself have gone through this experience where when I was growing, and actually, kind of people I've been around, very elite and Olympians and all these people. So I myself have faced the challenge how to connect, and they are really hard nuts to crack. Basically, not easy to work around the elite sportsmen. Anyone with the 5 years of experience, I don't see them even. They will not allow you to just uh, you know
Exactly.
yeah, you just simply can't go, and only because you got an opportunity to just be there, some organization hired you. To work with them, I think you have to have a really solid experience and work ethics on the same time. Your own, ethics are really very important, and that is
Very much.
the rapport building part with them is also very
Yeah.
difficult. Once you have the rapport with the elite athletes, they definitely will follow you. Um, I'm on. I will be also. I am myself learning basically still a lot of things. So one thing which I remember, from my experience, I want to ask you. So there are time when these the organization, the administrators, and maybe the technical director of the team or the managers of the team, they send, okay,
Mhm.
you go to the sports psychologist. And athletes usually do not feel like seeking support from a psychologist, but they have to go because they've been asked. Uh, that is the one case, and another case is where the athlete come with the awareness. Basically he knows or she knows, okay, I need a help from a sports psychology practitioner because they started experiencing, becoming self-aware about their problem. So how you basically see, and if I just want you to add into this
Mhm.
as well, which is the
Yeah. So
easiest
one,
one?
both are quite challenging because yeah, even one of it is it's quite positive when we know that the player is aware and does understand himself or herself better and is wanting to maybe seek help. I think that's quite good, but that's also a challenge for us as to we really have to figure out the understanding that the player has about himself or herself. Does it match with our observations, and how do we take it forward, right? But yeah, if the player is really not wanting to get into these services, and maybe if I'm traveling with the team and since everybody is speaking to me, that there are some athletes or players who are compelled to come and speak to me, that is, I would say, more challenging as compared to the earlier one. Now here it's what I how do I deal with it is because I do travel with so many teams, and at times it's not that everybody is seeking out for a sports psychologist. There are a few who would not. Um, my experience, if I have to share, this is what had happened when I was traveling with the World Cup team, and two or three players were not really, whatever their previous experiences were with other psychologists or from their different states, they were not really open for these kind of services. Yeah, but they were actually pushed into speaking to me, um, based on those players experiences, and they were like, just एक बार जाके आप बात करो, और फिर नहीं होता है तो you can leave it. Now that's where again it's a kind of a, as I said, challenge for me. How do you break that barrier, because the player doesn't want to, and I am here to explaining the player what is mental training, and I'm here to help the player. Now that is something which is quite difficult, but that's where I said, at times I really don't jump into the sport or to the issue or the kind of concerns that they are experiencing. My whole dialogue shifts around their previous matches that I have seen. Especially what we talk about is focusing more on the positives. If I've seen their earlier matches, I would talk about them. I would talk about certain positives that I have seen in their game, and that would spark them, because see, one, athletes are also very, very smart, and they are also judging you, right? They are also judging your knowledge, and that's where another message that I would like to give to the psychologist is your knowledge base is extremely important. Knowledge base, I mean, is of course your subject knowledge, but apart from that, if you are traveling with a cricket team, you need to know, understand the, I'm not saying purely the skills, but you should have watched the matches earlier. You should have, studied every player's progress, every player's, performances, because that would really help you to connect. And the moment I started getting onto this information, the player started becoming so curious. And the first question was, "Ma'am, आपको ये सब कैसे पता?" So of course I told her that I do watch matches. I do watch all of you all very closely, and that's where that maybe that barrier was broken. So again, as a sports psychologist, you will need to understand how, when, and what to speak to that player at that moment. Those who are really not wanting to come for these services.
Yeah.
So
uh,
that is, of course, as a sports psychologist, it's going to be your call. But yeah, don't ever get onto the negatives. Don't ever get jump onto their maybe lack of performances or their issues or concerns directly right in the first session.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, nobody likes, like somebody pointing out the negative in them. So this is also, you rather be positive and focus on their positives and strengths on the same time. I have stopped using
Absolutely.
the like your weaknesses. So something called SWOT analysis in sports
Yeah.
psychology. Do the SWOT analysis. Coaches be like, tell me strength and weaknesses. So I also telling them this. There is no weakness. There are some areas of
Mhm.
improvement. Maybe some deficits. We can call it.
Exactly.
So, and I also started mentioning that in the when I prepare the case reports or case presentations for athletes, keeping in mind, giving them code words and all rather than
Yeah.
putting their name. Because a lot of reports I have seen spreading here and there. You
Yeah. Yeah.
make a report and then you see, the report in the hand of some other person. Anyways, these are some challenges I don't think
No, but that's
people.
also the second thing, which, again, when we are talking to the athletes, we have to make it very clear that one, it's going to be absolutely kept confidential. It will not even be shared with the coaches. It will not be shared with any other players, because, see, one of the things why they are against these services is maybe at times they are a little insecure कि ये बात दूसरे कहाँ पे गई तो क्या होगा.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
other players, co-players, coaches would start talking about it, because still we don't have that kind of, what I say, awareness about sports psychology or mental training. We still look at it as a weakness at some places, at
Yes, yes.
at few platforms we do still look at it as a weakness. So that is again that insecurity, why the players are kept behind. They're really not wanting to take that help. how much ever अंदर से they want, वो help चाहिए होती है, पर ये insecurity के वजह से they're not able to really open up or approach a sports psychologist.
Still, I think I'm working with the foreigners here and Kalinga Stadium, Bhubaneswar, and so I've seen. So it is one of challenge, very big challenge. Basically, very difficult. Basically, to tell them, okay, we can't just tell you. They be like, tell us, tell us, tell us. So there are some constraints. Hopefully, we sports psychologists should create a program for the administration, people as
Yeah.
well, for managers as well. Train them, tell them, okay, these are some of the ethical guidelines we have to follow. We just can't break the confidentiality, especially confidentiality,
True.
and deceive the athlete and not telling them, that we have shared this and that without their permission. So a lot of things are there. They also need to understand. Anyways, so we have, trying to. I'm basically trying to learn about, when sports psychology approach and all. We both have discussed some of the points. So you have a very interesting competition, especially the Olympics. I know, how it is very special. First of all, to represent over there, from such a big country, 140, crore we are, and then you happen to be the few of those sports psychologists who uh, represented there. So tell us your experience in Paris. I was sending you messages. I remember
Okay.
trying to call you a message, then you'll be like, I am on the way to
Yeah.
Paris, and yeah, I took your
Yeah, yeah,
time,
yeah.
but you were busy. I have exercised my patience.
Correct. That's good. That's
Okay,
good.
tell us your
Yeah, so
experience.
it was a great experience. I think we at this level, and after being into the field for so long, of course, that is one of our dreams, that we want to be there. We want to be a part of the contingent, and we want to be with our players at that highest platform. And I think I'll consider myself one of the fortunates, where I could be a part of Olympics as well as Paralympics. And it was a great learning. And I think we just, one of the traits, as you had asked me earlier, one of the traits as a sports psychologist is also being very open for self development and self learning. And I think that gave me an opportunity. At times it was an eye opener for me as well, especially when I was accompanying the Paralympians, and I was in the village with the Paralympic athletes. And I think the way the athletes, whether they are Indians or from other countries, the way they handle themselves independently was was something very, very amazing. I mean, they are absolutely independent, whether they are wheelchair athletes or with any other disability, they're absolutely independent. You don't even feel that, there is some kind of a disability that they are going through. I mean, that was an amazing experience. And 15 days into the village, day in and day out, watching these players, even picking up their bags or, their kit, it was all done by themselves, and they did not have any help. Rather, they didn't want any help from others. So they were so independent. That is where I say, ki this is like a big learning for me, how you can be independent, where I always talk to my athletes that what you do on the field and what you do off the field, it goes hand in hand. So if you are quite independent in your thinking and in your other processes outside, that is definitely going to help you on field as well. And the most important thing is being independent is going to impact your decision making skills in a positive way. So that was a biggest learning for me, a biggest, I think I could really um, watch all of these things live over there. And plus, yeah, with watching the games live, usually we watch that on
Yeah.
TV, but being there watching those events, be it wrestling, be it weightlifting, be it athletics, I was there and watching it live, and experiencing those vibes was such a great thing for me. And again, second is where, so these are the things which I learned. But yeah, you can also feel the kind of, um, the pressures, the nervousness that athletes feel at that moment. And usually being here, we only can imagine. But being there, looking at that grandeur of that event, you really know what the pressures are. Yeah, and you are just a psychologist, but you have athletes who are going to participate at that bigger platform, and there you understand what kind of pressure that the player must be going through. And interventions at that moment is something which is very, very crucial. So I used to talk to the athletes few days prior to their event, just before the event, one day prior to the event. And those are the kind of sessions that really, really helped athletes, because one, I was observing them in their training sessions so that I could get some kind of knowledge about what athletes are going through. And that is something which I could cover in the sessions, and also my interventions which I could actually give it to them at that moment live when I'm sitting in front of them and talking to them.
Yes, actually, of course, I just wanted to ask the same thing you just covered because it's a multi-sport event.
Mm-hmm.
Olympic is it is not like you go to any world champion of any single sport.
Yeah,
World championship do have pressure on different type of pressure on the athlete because it is not easy to become a world champion also. But
yeah, yeah,
visiting a multi-sport event, especially Olympics, I think come with a lot of distractions also, especially for young athletes who
absolutely.
will go, qualify first time. I think it is
The
more
first
challenging
timers,
for them
yeah,
to understand. Yes, yes. So being from sports psychology point of view, I can definitely say that you being present over there must be observing also, and on the same time making
exactly,
sure that the whichever athlete you are working with, you make yourself available through both offline online ways,
exactly,
so that they can helping them basically uh, s- uh,
exactly.
being in that mindset is really very important. That is more psychological challenge when you qualify to that level rather than
It is,
you can't simply say that you're physically feeling that deficit over there. Your skills are not near
exactly.
potential or at the level of potential and technique. You all definitely you can forget if you develop some kind of nervousness, anxiety, then you don't know
Yeah,
how to
yeah.
handle that over there with using different variety of coping skills.
No,
So
and even the athletes feel that, when we are doing the sessions maybe online, it's just that maybe somewhere the athletes would be feeling, my psychologist is out there in India. How would they understand what we are going through? Yeah, and that was something which was not there because I was there with them day in and day out. I was talking to them every day, so I could really understand. Because to be frank, the situation out there when you actually get into the village, it is really overwhelming. And
Yeah,
if we are feeling that way, we can really understand how athletes and players must be going through. Because you have, all the contingents out there, all the players in huge numbers out there. So it is going to take a mental toll on you, and you definitely
yeah,
need help at
yes.
that moment. Yeah. And
It is,
another
it is,
thing,
it is
again,
coming to my imagination actually. You're giving this,
yes,
description overwhelming, and for a
yes,
moment, I started just visualizing myself, the scenario in my mind actually. I can simply more
absolutely.
than 100 countries and
Yeah.
all people over
It
there.
is,
Yes,
it is
definitely.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. And so
Because
second thing, see, as sports psychologists, what is important, another thing for us is, picking up those cues, those, verbal, non-verbal cues, your body language, your expressions. I could actually, when I appreciated that, because that is something which, see, over the phone, they would say, nahi, sab theek hai, इतना कुछ nervousness नहीं है. But in their body language, when we are present there, we can notice that. And that's where, as a sports psychologist, we can actually catch that and start talking to them. So that was the biggest advantage, being there on that platform with them.
So actually, this is interesting. So observation skills has to be pretty good actually. When you just said
Very
actually
much.
body language is important. So it is another basically subject as well. There are some courses around body language if you really want to learn about body language in detail. Definitely being present over there comes with a lot of advantage. Coming on to the your basically core means from orientation point of view work on elite athletes, and you work on their performance enhancement, their mental performance. So how you define the champion mindset?
Uh, Tough question, Karan. Okay, so defining champions mindset, what I always, that's my personal opinion, is that we are not born champions, right? And when you actually start working with elite athletes, you realize that even athletes are not really roaming around with that tag that we are champions. They're as normal, because this is the question that I've been asked so many times, that, how do you feel when you're working with these elite athletes? Maybe cricket or maybe any other sport. But my frank opinion is, when you're actually with them, you really don't feel, because they are as down to earth as possible, and with the same needs and with same demands when it comes to the mental aspects. So champions mindset, of course, is something which we develop over a period of time. Yeah, so that's basically my opinion, that we are not born with it most of the times. Yes, I mean, there are certain things that we have leadership skills, or we have good organizational skills, or there are people who are more extrovert as compared to the others who are introverted. But yeah, having these differences is fine. But everybody at that level has that need of really empowering themselves and working on the mindsets.
Since if you can still say from a sports psychology point of view, from mental skill point of view, like there are mental skills, conventional skills we can also say. Another
Mhm.
very powerful concept nowadays every sports psychologist is using is a concept of mindfulness, that is also very
Yeah.
powerful philosophical thing for the athletes. So what have you observed in terms of their mental routine, pre-participation routine, we call it PPRs?
Mhm.
So if you can
Mhm.
highlight a little bit about it, or
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you have worked basically. Yeah.
So you're asking about the interventions, right? That
Yes, yes,
some
yes,
of the
interventions.
players, there are some players, very, very few, which I have seen, whether again it's in cricket or in our Olympic sports, is very few players have these kind of routines, or do really know the importance of following the routines. They're just doing it maybe because they've been told by the coaches. But yeah, I think the interventions, one, I always believe, we cannot really force the interventions onto them. But even before I give them interventions, one is, as I earlier also said, diagnostics is very, very crucial, right? Because see, what we always say that one intervention would not fit the others. So when it comes to diagnostics, my entire role is actually going into the nuances of every player's personality, which is like a huge task for a sports psychologist, because especially if you're traveling with a team, when I'm traveling with the cricketers, there are like 11 players, three reserves, and the entire support staff as well, right? Because I do interact with them also. So, understanding especially the players in huge numbers, talking to them one on one, finding out their personality nuances, and also understanding if they are following any routines, if they are following any mental training techniques, is like that actually eats up a lot of my time doing that, but that is a necessary step that we need to do it. Yeah, so that's one. And then post that, considering their personalities, considering where they come from, that is where the demographic details are very crucial. And what has been their background, how has been their childhood, that's exactly where now the psychology background helps. All of this taking into consideration, and then I propose the interventions for every player, which is going to be a little different, right? So if you talk about mindfulness, yeah, while suggesting the techniques, I also get into the details of why am I recommending these techniques. Because if you don't answer the question why, either they will just follow because you are saying, or they will just not believe in it and they will not follow. Yeah. So even when I'm talking about breath work, even if I talk about visualization, I give them certain scientific reasons behind how it helps. And that is where they start actually having that faith in those techniques. And then we move on to the interventions. And then my role is observing them, taking a feedback from them as to how these interventions are working. So it's a huge, huge process. It's pre and post, but that is something which is very crucial. So some of the interventions which I use on an individual basis is, of course, I go ahead with certain, as you said, mindfulness techniques, breath work, visualization. These are the things, but most important is I try and understand the thought process, right? And
Yeah.
the moment you understand their thought process, because I think, yeah, visualization, breath work comes a little later. That's a second step. The first step is I try and understand and getting deeper into their thought process. Yeah, by asking certain questions, by giving them certain situations about that sport at this moment. How do you feel when you are bowling in the death over? What are your thought processes? Or if you are there as an opening batsman, what are your thought processes? And that gives me so much of knowledge of their thought process, and that's where I figure out what is the intervention that would best suit this player. Yeah. So
Yes,
interventions
yes.
are a lot many, but again, having a CBT background, I believe a lot in the thought process. And then I get into how do you actually get into thought reconstruction? How do you get into positive suggestions? And explaining it to them is very crucial, very, very important.
Yeah, very, very. I totally agree. The thoughts are really, really important, and it basically, you know, by definition, we all have learned in psychology that it is our job is like how we understand, that the manifestation of the thought into different situation, because one
Yeah,
single thought can make you a champion, or another type of thought can make you a loser in the situation. So working on a thought process
absolutely.
using some restructuring techniques also, I think, more important. I'll say I
Very.
myself have seen, working and restructuring, reframing, and teaching them how to process their thought in a situation, replacing it with a different over the period of time. It will not happen in a single day or
Mm-hmm.
1 week, even. Actually, I think 3 to 6 months
Exactly.
down the line, you can keep it a short-term
Mm-hmm.
goal, helping your athletes,
Mm-hmm.
especially those who are struggling with the anxiety, especially nervousness, because
Correct.
thought are something which are triggering these kind of
Exactly.
emotions among the athletes. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good, interesting kind of discussion which we are having. We both are, I think, enjoying even talking to each other here.
Yeah.
Moving a little bit, I just remember writing something I need to go through. I have written, I sent you. So, yeah, so
Okay.
challenges. So,
Mm-hmm.
I have seen, I remember 5, 6 years ago, and I was telling, courses will come, the jobs will come. I know you also working with the young team of sports psychologist. So how you basically look at both the scope of sports psychology in future, what challenges are ahead, us, and what are the opportunities on the same time for us?
Yeah. Yes, I think compared to what I look at my period back then, right now, sports psychology, in fact, sports is growing. uh, in that, sports psychology is really gaining a great importance, and we see like every year the number of sports psychologists who are getting into the field is increasing a
Mhm.
lot. So that's a good sign, I would say, because we need that we know how many sports people and athletes we have, but we have very few sports psychologists working in this area. And that's where I have also started working on building my team. One of the things which I usually recommend, and I tell even my team, the first thing that I believe is, I know there are going to be opportunities ahead. There are going to be a lot many opportunities, a lot many openings. But if you want to get into this field, the first thing is be as I said earlier, also, your knowledge base is very important. Along with that, your subject knowledge, I would say. Along with that, knowing about that field, knowing about the demands of that field, and how is it going to be like, how do you want to take yourself ahead rather than just jumping onto the result. Like, I want to be with elite athletes and I want to really make them win. Rather than having that goal, just focus on how you can actually build yourself up, which I always call it as, when we are talking about self awareness for players, it has to be self development for us as well as psychologists. And these are the key things that, as newcomers who are getting into this field, I think they have to be really open to it. Second, they really need to understand and ask these questions to yourself as to, what are my values? What is it that I'm bringing into this field? Yeah, your philosophies. We talk a lot about philosophies and values when I usually take programs for the coaches, but that applies to us also, as being into this field of sports psychology. So try and understand, ask those questions to yourself, do self reflection. I mean, I do that after every trip that I come back from. Like, what are the things I could have still done better? What are the things maybe I must have done certain mistakes? I do take those feedbacks from maybe the team who was involved or support staff who was there. So these are the kind of learnings that would make us grow. And I think open to learning always is, I think, the most important characteristic that a sports psychologist should have.
I think you would also like to add one more point, which is the internship and mentorship program. I think it's equally
Yeah,
important. It was not
absolutely,
there.
absolutely.
It was not there when
Mhm.
I started practice in 2014. So it was not kind of available.
Not at all. Not at
Yes,
all.
yes. And now recently we have seen, I have seen even, I tried to, I already have trained
Mhm.
14, 15,
Mhm.
the students under
Mhm.
me. They have done internship. A lot of queries basically regarding the internship and mentorship program also coming up.
Yeah.
And those who are listening the podcast, the budding sports
Mhm.
psychologist, my request to you,
Exactly. Yeah.
go train under someone for 6 months at least. Try to learn.
Absolutely.
You may they may experience little bit philosophical, some orientation based differences when they will get job and will be working under someone. Maybe if they're
Yeah.
lucky enough,
Yeah.
they will not work under anyone. It is not really easy to
Exactly.
work under people.
No,
But
no, I know, I know. No, I think I
yes,
agree with you, Karan. Internships and mentorship programs are really very crucial. In fact, I did my mentorship uh, 1 year back, and because when I started, I did not have anyone where I where should I go and do my internship. But I was really lucky again, because back then, if you know Vishwaraj Bam sir,
I know.
I was again absolutely very fortunate to be under his guidance, and he used to actually take me everywhere, wherever he used to travel with all the athletes. And that's where I think that also is something which I have picked up certain skills from him, because he was one of the best in the field at that moment. So, having those internships, yeah, I didn't go through like proper internships. I did in the field of psychology, but for my sports psychology, Bam sir was always there. And mentorship, yeah, I think because as I always said, it's, you have to be open to learning always. And if you do that, I think that really helps you to grow to the next level. Can you just
So
repeat the question because your voice
it was
broke
not
in
a
between?
question,
Yeah.
basically. I was just talking to, I was just telling you, saying that was about to ask you that what advice you would give to
Acha.
budding sports
Okay.
psychologist. I think you covered we have covered enough, basically, telling them,
Mm-hmm.
what they have to do in terms of either it is mentorship program, internship programs, having a really good base of sports and sports sciences, trying to understand the sport as well, equally important. Uh, they there are people, there are some confusion around that, if you come from a sport background, I think it is an add-on. You will, because you yourself experience, these thoughts and emotions when you play as a sportsman at the national international level. That definitely helps you. But I think, to me, I think it is not mandatory, because there are many sports psychologists, budding young, those they are actually not playing any
Mm-hmm.
sport. Actually, they are not a sport background, so they do not need to worry. You will learn over the period of time. Like, we are still learning.
Yeah.
I was telling that I've gained this confidence when I grew,
Mm-hmm.
grown up in this field. After 10 years, started basically feeling that I'm confident in this field now.
Yeah.
It took
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
10 years to stand, and I don't feel that nervous if some big people are coming for a visit and all. I stay very calm.
Correct.
So you will
Correct.
also see these changes in you. So any
Yeah.
concluding remarks, Mugdha, for our audience in the last? Tell them to like, subscribe, share. This is not a money-making podcast, though it is simple and educational podcast. But
Yeah. Yeah.
still tell them if they, because reward is something which give you a lot of motivation. So
It would come.
yes, yes. I'm missing
Yeah.
comments. People are not commenting. They call me when our
Mm-hmm.
students, they call me, or maybe other people call me. They tell me on cell phone, sir, we listen to your podcast. Now, why don't you comment? Actually, then comment. Tell me if I'm doing, if how I can improve. Basically, this
Yeah.
is one
Yeah.
of my
Yeah.
skill. I love YouTube. I
Mm-hmm.
had my channel and all. But anyways,
Okay.
so any concluding remarks
Okay.
from your end?
Concluding remarks, yeah, as we just spoke about budding sports psychologists, I think one of the things that we really need to keep in mind is, yeah, the field is really very interesting. At the same time, very challenging. There are going to be like ups and downs in the field. There are going to be at times where you feel that, oh, how much ever I'm putting in, my athlete is just not, getting any kind of results. These are the things that are going to be there. But as I said, your self reflection is something which is very crucial. Mentorship at that time would really help you. Apart from that, just be open and be ready when you're diving into the field where it is going to be full of challenges, something like unexpected calls at any time. Though we are quite professional and we draw those timelines that beyond this you can't, but see, at times it happens, especially when we are working with elite athletes, that the player is in a different timeline, in a different time zone, and it's 12 o'clock at our place, but it's morning for them. Yeah, so we really can't say that I can't talk to you right now, because that's where they need it urgently, some kind of advice. Of course, that shouldn't be a usual practice, but yeah, keep yourself open to these kind of things. So that is one of the things. There are going to be like a lot many travels that would come up. So taking care of yourself, your physical as well as mental health is equally important, because this is a helping profession and we are there to help athletes. So we have to take care of ourselves first so that you'll be able to help your players. I think just few suggestions, that these are the suggestions that I have for budding psychologists.
Like, subscribe, and share. You
And
missed.
enjoy the okay, okay. Do I really have to say that?
It is up to you. This is only you
Yeah, if you
can.
like this
This is
episode,
this
I don't. If you like this episode, I think give a thumbs up, subscribe, and watch more episodes on this YouTube channel. That is what my recommendation would be.
So, first of all, thank you so much. I think it was very interesting, and insightful, I'll say, conversation with you, learning about you even more actually, about your philosophies, orientation, different approaches, different scenarios, how we dodge around, as a sports psychologist, how we maneuver basically, mediate in a different type of organizations among variety of minds. Athlete are the one, but definitely we work alongside with all of them. Um it was pretty interesting. And I hope that audience will also, the people who will watch this podcast, watch you, people who listen to you, they will also enjoy listening this conversation. And it is not like this is the only episode we are going to do with you, Mukta. By the way, I will, you know, may bother you again in future
Sure, sure.
sometime. Uh, you
Anytime.
know, maybe on a different time, different type of topic we'll talk. So thank you everyone for connecting with us, watching this episode, and as we said, like, subscribe, share, and comment also, and tell us if what we are doing. And again, thank you, Mugdha. Have a great day.
Thanks, Karan. Yeah, same to you. Thank you so much.